Hi, this is Sarah Seamount of the State Department of Education Migrant Education Program, and today's training is on the Migrant Education Fidelity of Strategy Implementation tool, which is a large mouthful. Generally, we call it the FSI, where we will talk about the overview of the document, scoring, and reporting. So this is what the document looks like. It has areas for you to rate your own implementation, areas where you can look at how you've been implementing, and the documentation that you have on site based on your implementation of various strategies. So why do we use the FSI? One of the purposes is to inform the implementation evaluation of the Idaho map as required by the U.S. Department of Ed. So we are required to evaluate our program annually and periodically to use an outside evaluator to help us to evaluate that our program is being implemented fully and is helping children, migratory children in Idaho. So this is part of that effort. It's also to measure the level of implementation of each strategy to determine the extent to which the MEP services are delivered with fidelity, and also to serve as a self-assessment guide to local MEPs in implementing migrant-funded services in the 4 goal areas that we've identified in our service delivery plan, and those include school readiness, English language, arts, and math, high school graduation with services to out-of-school youth, and non-instructional support services. So here are the strategies that we've identified in our service delivery plan that will be implemented from 2020 through 2023. First, in school readiness is to provide MEP-funded supplemental instructional services to migratory children ages 3 to 5. And you'll notice in all these strategies, it's very general when you look at what the strategy says. The specificity comes when you look at all the examples of ways that that strategy might be implemented. So it could be site-based, home-based, regular school year, summer services, or a parent volunteer program. It could be for our second strategy to provide parents with ideas, activities, and material for use at home in order to promote first language development, family literacy, and school readiness. There are all kinds of examples: parent activities, trainings, PAC meetings, home visits, family nights, mini workshops, small groups, one-on-one parent-child activities, the Preschool Initiative Consortium materials that we created, the preschool learning kits. All of those are different ways to implement that strategy. For English language, arts, and mathematics, we have 3: provide migrant-funded resources and training to migratory families to promote literacy and numeracy skills, provide migratory students with evidence-based supplemental ELA and math instruction, and to collaborate with district, state, and federal programs to provide professional development to new and experienced teachers and paraprofessionals on evidence-based strategies for developing academic language. For high school graduation and services to out-of-school youth, we have coordinate and provide secondary migratory students with mentoring, which we know many districts do through the use of graduation specialists or migrant case managers. There's a variety of names, but if you look at the list of possible ways to implement this strategy, there are lots of them. So, take the time to look through all those examples because they can be very helpful in maybe sparking an idea that would be useful and doable in your district. The next one is to coordinate and provide services for out-of-school youth and dropouts. And we do that in a number of ways, but these are our hardest students in many ways to serve and require constant diligence on our part to reach out to those students and sometimes their families to make sure that they have educational opportunities. We don't give up on students. Next, we have additional support services. One of them is to provide professional development for MEP and non-MEP staff on the migratory lifestyle and the unique needs of migratory students and how to address those needs. Super important that we do that because we're all in this together to try and help meet the needs of migratory students. And then to provide support services to students and families to increase student engagement in school. And there's a number of different ideas here on how that might be done. And finally, we have establishing partnerships and or agreements among the school districts and community healthcare providers. At one time, we surveyed parents and asked them of the 7 areas of concern that were identified for migratory children, which were their top 3 concerns. And when all of the data was aggregated, what we discovered is that healthcare was either number 1 or number 2 for parents in all 3 regions of the states that we visited. And so that tells us that there's a great deal of need for migratory children to be able to access healthcare and especially affordable healthcare for families who probably don't, in many cases, have health insurance. So how do I do the FSI? If I'm a district director, migrant director, as I once was, how would I have approached this document? So the first thing you want to do is gather a group of key staff. So that would include your migrant family liaison, your director at a bare minimum, but it might also include a graduation specialist, a paraprofessional, or anyone else that works with the migrant program to make sure, someone that's knowledgeable in the migrant program, to make sure that you have all of your key staff present. And then during your discussions, check the ways in which the strategies were implemented and the documentation relevant to your project. So if we go back to the original slide, you will notice on the picture that you'll have an area in the middle of the page that says, check the ways in which the strategy was implemented in your project. So here are lots of possible ways that you may have implemented this strategy to provide MEP-funded supplemental instructional services to migrant children ages 3 to 5. Here are some ideas of how you might have done that. If you find one that is something you've done, then you'll check that box. And then you'll also check which documentation you have. You won't be submitting that documentation, but if you needed to produce it, do you have it? And so you'll check any of these that you have. The other thing you may find is that you have decided on a completely different strategy than the one that's shown, ones that are shown here, and you may want to, and you would document that here. You also may have other documents other than the ones that are listed here that would help support and provide evidence for the work that you're doing, and you can list those here. What I really like is here's also an opportunity to put ideas and notes for what you're thinking you might do in the future, which is critically important. This reflection tool is intended to help you also as a planning tool. When you look at these, all of these different ideas for how to implement a strategy, you might say, oh, wow, we really want to try this one. So I encourage you to use the comments in the follow-up box in order to make your notes for ideas and plans that you have for the future based on the reflection that you've done with this tool. See if I can find my way back. All right. So as you're completing the FSI, once you've reached consensus, check the applicable rating. At the top of the page, there's a checkbox that you can use to show what rating you would give yourself on a 5-point rubric. And it gives a definition of what that may look like if you are a 1, not aware, nothing is happening. 3, developing, you have some things happening. And 4, succeeding, that's the point at which we say we are proficient in this strategy. And I know from past experience that oftentimes people will mark themselves as a 3, thinking that 4 is exemplary, kind of the way that we look at test scores. On a 4-point rubric, 4 would be advanced. In this rubric, on a 5-point rubric, 4 is considered proficient. And so if you feel that your program is succeeding in the implementation of a particular strategy, don't hesitate to mark that. I won't see you as being vain or boastful if you say that you're succeeding. And then when you're thinking about the rubric for scoring, the one that would be equal to, say, a test score that was advanced would be exceeding. So this is going to be, you're really going above and beyond, and wouldn't mind being somebody that shared with your neighboring districts ways that they can improve. So if you feel that your program is highly, highly successful, don't hesitate to mark a 5. At the same time, we want this to be an honest evaluation and reflection on your program. So if it's true that you're feeling like we're just getting started, we're just developing, then put a 3 by all means. A 1 or a 2 means either that you'd never seen this strategy and aren't doing anything, and it was one that you had selected. Aware is just what it sounds like. You're just dipping your toe in the water. You're just finding out and learning, but you really haven't started developing that strategy. So that being said, if the strategy is one that was optional and you did not select it, or you didn't have students who were able to participate so that it wasn't possible to do that strategy, there will be boxes at the bottom of the page where you can check either of those two things. They will only be available on those strategies where those are options. So one of the things I want to really emphasize is that I feel that completing the FSI together as a team has some real advantages for the team. It is a great opportunity to spend time with the family liaison director and any other migrant staff to reflect on the year's accomplishments. I hope for most of you this is really going to be a celebration of all the hard work that you've done. It's also a great opportunity, like I just mentioned, to discuss changes or improvements and to plan for the next year. It is not accidental that you're doing this process just before you write your consolidated grant application in the CFSGA. There's where you'll tell me your plan for how you're going to implement the strategies that will hopefully allow us to succeed at the MPOs. So this is happening right before that and is a great opportunity to really look at what you're doing now and what you'd like to see happen in the future. It isn't to say that you need to change things, but it's always a good idea when we reflect to also think on what can we improve. I'm hoping that it will only take 60 to 90 minutes to complete. That is a substantial amount of time in anyone's day, but I believe it is time well spent. So when do you do the FSI? So the timeline, we recommend that you complete it in either late April or May in preparation for the CFSGA, as I mentioned just a moment ago. If your district only serves students during the regular year, and I'm happy to say that is so very few anymore. Most districts are serving students in some ways during the summer. So if you are one of those districts that only has a summer or your school year program, then please submit your completed FSI to me by June 30th. And I will recommend that you not list any student PII. I can't think of a reason why you would in your FSI as you're completing it, which you can do electronically as a Word document, or you can do on paper. If you just like the feeling of scribbling on the page, that's fine too. And so you would send that to me by the same time as you finish your CFSGA. And then for year-round projects, meaning those that have summer services, please submit your completed FSI to me by September 15th, which is also the date by which you would normally have all of your data in MSIS for student services, residency verification dates, and the like. So, and that's around the time that we roll over MSIS for the year. So these are kind of tied to two different deadlines that already exist. One for programs that do not have summer services and one for programs who do. And here is our contact information, myself, Julissa Lara, our program specialist, and Tanya Skirtu, who is our administrative assistant. All of us are here and happy to help you anytime you need it. And feel free to reach out if there's anything more we can do to help explain the process. Have a great day.